Religion in a global context. Religious fundamentalism. In a global context, religious fundamentalism has emerged as a major area of concern. The characteristics of fundamentalism. Sociologists have identified a number of features of fundamentalism. An authoritative text, sacred text, so for Christian fundamentalists, every word of the Bible is literally true and eternally valid, with the answers to all of life's important questions. They see biblical prophecies being fulfilled in today's world. Fundamentalists are intolerant of all other views and refuse to engage in rational argument. An us and them mentality. Fundamentalists separate themselves from the rest of society, from the rest of the world, and refuse to compromise with it. They seek to establish islands of certainty amongst social and cultural chaos. Aggressive reaction to the threat, to their beliefs and values. Use of modern technology to achieve their aims, for example, the internet, televangelism, and modern weaponry. Patriarchy, so fundamentalists seek to control women's sexuality, reproductive powers, and social and economic roles. Conspiracy theories. Fundamentalists often believe that powerful, hidden evil forces are in control of human destiny. Fundamentalism and human modernity. Although fundamentalists appeal to tradition, fundamentalism is different from traditional religion. It arises only where those who hold traditional beliefs and values feel threatened by modernity. Davey thus argues that fundamentalists are themselves products of modernity. The threat may come from outside, for example, globalization, or from within, for example, liberal attitudes to gender. Cosmopolitanism. Giddens sees fundamentalism as a reaction to modernity, which undermines traditional norms, for example, about gender and sexuality. He contrasts it with cosmopolitanism, a way of thinking that embraces modernity, is tolerant, open, and constantly reflects on and modifies beliefs. This is called reflexive thinking. Cosmopolitanism sees lifestyle as a personal choice, not something dictated by an external religious authority. It emphasizes the pursuit of personal meaning or self-improvement rather than the submission to authority. Criticisms of Giddens. He is fixated on fundamentalism, ignoring other ways that globalization and modernity affect religion. He lumps all types of fundamentalism together, ignoring the differences. He claims fundamentalism is a reaction against modernity, but reinventing tradition as fundamentalists do is itself a modern reflexive activity. Monotheism and fundamentalism. Bruce sees the main cause of fundamentalism as the perception of religious traditionalists that globalization threatens their beliefs and lifestyle. This leads them to develop rigid rules about belief and behavior. However, Bruce regards fundamentalism as being confined to monotheistic religions, so Judaism, Islam, Christianity. Polytheistic religions, such as Hinduism, that believe in many gods, are unlikely to produce fundamentalism. Bruce argues that this is because monotheistic religions are based on a notion of God's will as revealed through a single authoritative text. Polytheists lack a single all-powerful deity and a single authoritative text, leaving much more scope for differing interpretations. Two fundamentalisms. Bruce argues that while fundamentalists share the same characteristics, such as belief in the literal truth of the sacred text, different fundamentalist movements have different origins. In the West, fundamentalism is usually a reaction to change within society, for example, trends towards diversity and choice. So the new Christian right in America has developed in opposition to family diversity, sexual permissiveness, gender equality, and secular education. In the Third World, fundamentalism is usually a reaction to changes being thrust on a society from outside, for example, Western values imposed by foreign capitalism. Here, fundamentalism involves resistance to the state's attempts to reduce social influence on religion. Circular fundamentalism. Davey argues that we are seeing the rise of circular fundamentalism as a result of changes within the nature of modern society. She distinguishes between two phases of modernity. The first phase ran from the time of the 18th century Enlightenment to the 1960s. The Enlightenment project held an optimistic belief in the certainty of progress based on science and human reason. This helped to secularize all areas of social life, undermining religious certainties. Religious fundamentalism was one reaction to this secularization process. The second phase is giving rise to circular fundamentalism. Since the 1970s, there's been a growing mood of pessimism, uncertainty and insecurity caused by changes such as globalization. At the same time, postmodernism emerged, arguing that circular Enlightenment ideologies such as liberalism and Marxism were simply meta-narratives whose belief in progress was unfounded. As a result, these circular ideologies have come under attack. In reaction, some people have been attracted to anti-religious fundamentalism. For example, France has made it illegal to wear the veil in public. Ainsworth sees such trends as a form of cultural racism that uses the seemingly liberal language of equality and integration. But in reality, it is about legitimizing the exclusion of religious or cultural minorities. Davey argues that both religious and circular movements can become fundamentalist due to the greater uncertainties of the postmodern world, where reasserting truth and certainty is increasingly attractive. The clash of civilizations. Religion has been at the center of a number of recent global conflicts, for example, the 9/11 Islamist attacks in the USA. Jackson sees Huntington's work as an example of Orientalism, a Western ideology that stereotypes Eastern nations and people, especially Muslims, as untrustworthy, inferior, or fanatical others. Huntington, an American neoconservative, claims these conflicts have intensified since the collapse of communism in 1989 and are symbols of a wider clash of civilizations. He identifies 7 civilizations: Western, Latin America, Confucian, so China, Japanese, Hindu, Islamic, and Slavic Orthodox. Each civilization has a common cultural background and is closely identified with one of the world's great religions. Since the fall of communism, religious differences have become a major source of identity. Globalization also makes nation-states less important as a source of identity and makes contact between civilizations easier, increasing the likelihood of old conflicts re-emerging. Religious differences are creating a new set of hostile us and them relationships, with increased competition between civilizations for economic and military power. Huntington sees history as a struggle of progress against barbarism, and predicts growing conflicts between the West and the rest. The real clash of civilizations. So, World Value Survey data indicates that the issue dividing the West from the Muslim world is not democracy but sexuality. Support for democracy is high in both the West and the Muslim world, but there are great differences in attitudes in divorce, abortion, gender equality, and gay rights. While Western attitudes have become more elite, more liberal, in the Muslim world they remain traditional. Cultural defense. Bruce sees one function of religion as cultural defense. Religion unites a community against an external threat, and this often gives a prominent role in politics. Religion has special significance for its followers because it symbolizes the group or society's collective identity. Poland from 1945 to 1989. Poland was under communist rule imposed from outside by the Soviet Union. Although the Catholic Church did not always challenge the communist regime openly, it served as a popular rallying point for the opposition, for example, actively supporting the Solidarity Free Trade Union movement that contributed to the fall of communism. Iran. Western capitalist powers and oil companies had a long influence in Iran, installing a pro-Western regime headed by the Shah. During the 1960s and 70s, his successor embarked on a policy of rapid modernization and westernization. Islam became the focus for resistance to change and to the Shah. The 1979 revolution brought the creation of the Islamic Republic, in which clergy held state power and were able to impose Islamic Sharia law. Religion and development. According to secularization theory, development undermines religion. Modern science and technology destroy belief in the supernatural. However, religion may also contribute to development. For example, Weber's claim that the Protestant ethic helped bring about modern capitalism. More recently, sociologists have examined the role religion plays in development in today's globalizing world. God and globalization in India. Globalization has brought rapid economic growth in India and rising prosperity to a new middle class. Nanda examines the role of Hinduism, the religion of 85% of the population, in legitimating the rise of a new Hindu ultra-nationalism and the prosperity of the Indian middle class. Hinduism and consumerism. According to secularization theory, the prosperous, scientifically educated urban middle class are precisely the people who will be the first to adopt a secular worldview. Yet surveys show that Indians are becoming more religious, and that urban educated Indians are more religious than rural, less literate Indians. However, to evaluate this, poverty and existential security cannot explain this increased religiosity, because the middle class are not poor. Nanda argues that this increasing religiosity is the result of the middle class's ambivalence about their newfound wealth, stemming from a tension between their new prosperity and the traditional Hindu belief in renouncing materialism. This is resolved by the modern holy men and telegurus who preach the message that desire is not bad, but manifestation of divinity that motivates people to do things. These business-friendly versions of Hinduism legitimate the position of the middle class and allow them to adjust to globalized consumer capitalism. Hinduism also legitimates a triumphalist version of Indian nationalism. Politicians and the media constantly promote the view that India's success in the global market is due to the superiority of Hindu values. Hinduism has also penetrated public life and the supposedly secular state. For example, Hindu sciences such as astrology are being taught as academic subjects in public universities and being used supposedly to predict natural disasters. Pentecostalism in Latin America. Berger argues that Pentecostalism in Latin America acts as a functional equivalent to Weber's Protestant ethic, encouraging the development of capitalism in the same way as Calvinism did in the 16th century Europe. Like Calvinism, Pentecostalism demands an ascetic, so self-denying way of life, emphasizing personal discipline and hard work. This encourages its members to prosper and become upwardly mobile. For Berger, something like Protestantism is necessary to promote economic development to raise a society out of poverty. This can be held by an active minority within ethic of this worldly asceticism, such as the Pentecostalists. Pentecostalism, global and local. In the last 5 centuries, Christianity has globalized itself by expanding in South America and Africa. Laymen suggest that the first phase of this was through colonization, with Christianity being imposed on the indigenous populations by conquest. In the second phase, over the last century, it has spread because it gained a popular following from below, mainly through Pentecostalist and similar charismatic movements. Pentecostalism creates new local religious forms incorporating existing local beliefs, for example, spirit's possession, rather than replacing them with ones imposed from outside. In Africa, this has led to the Africanization of Christianity rather than the total disappearance of indigenous religions.